Welcome to Engo Bucks. We have been gone for a little while, but the spring is upon us, and it sure does sound like things are starting to happen and be interesting. But we're going to talk about all the position groups for Michigan and Ohio State. We're going to kind of go over them. We're going to rate them. We're going to decide which one has the advantage. Today, we're starting with the secondary, but we'll go through all of them here in the next couple days. But stay to the end because we are definitely going to decide who's got the advantage in all these position groups. Tonight's the secondary. But Matt, let's go to you first to talk about Ohio State. Sure looks like Ohio State is actually bringing back a bevy of talent, and they've got some young talent. What do you have to say about the secondary this year for Ohio State?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of talent, obviously, especially at corner. I think Igbinosun gets a lot of crap because of all of the pass interference, and he's very handsy. But I mean, despite all of that, he's still been really good. We would have not made the playoffs had he not made that interception against Penn State. Like that saved the game and the season. So, he obviously has a big play in him. He definitely needs to, work on not being so handsy all the time. But he's still a solid player, and if he gets that fixed even a little bit, it's just going to be night and day. Like how much better the secondary is going to be, because I think part of it too is when you have a reputation for something, just like let's say you're Deion Sanders, like sometimes you get a reputation for just being amazing, so then people just don't throw at you at all, or you get a reputation for not, just doing everything perfectly, and then the refs aren't going to call penalties on you. But then he had a reputation for the pass interferences and stuff before he even got to Ohio State. So the refs generally know like which guys to look out for that are generally all over the other players and stuff like that. And then once you get a reputation, it's hard to break. So hopefully he can start out the season differently, and then maybe that'll help going forward. But I would say, just still, but I'm really happy with most of our returning guys, but I'm just a little bit worried losing Ransom and Hancock, especially just because they were both so good last year, and losing Ransom 2 years ago was probably the reason why we lost to Michigan. So, I mean, that guy was. It just seems like so many of our seasons hinge on safety play. And obviously, we have Caleb Downs, so we have one amazing safety, but the Ohio State teams that do really well and win titles always have elite secondary play at safety. More so than corner, because we've had lots of good corners over the years, but the teams with the good safeties are the ones that win the titles. Looking at 2002 and 2014, and then I think it was 2013, wasn't it, Brian? Where was it Christian Bryant? Was that 2013 when he went down and Urban Meyer just knew that we were screwed because we had no one to do anything, no one that could do anything behind him, and he was just the leader of the secondary.
Well, I just I have to since it's basketball time, I got to throw a foul here. It's a foul call on Matt. How do you talk about the
Ooh,
Buckeye
that's friendly
secondary,
fire.
and how do you talk about the Buckeye secondary and the first name out of your mouth is not Caleb Downs? Like you
Because
alluded to him,
because
but you
that's
didn't say
because
Caleb
that's the
Downs.
obvious one. We don't even need to
No,
talk
no, we
about
do
it.
need to talk about it. The first name that Patricia talked about when in his introductory press conference was Caleb Downs. He's the first guy you find when you get in the door. He is as good on defense as Jeremiah Smith is on offense. And as long as you've got him, you've got the anchor of your defense. And I'm all for IGB coming back at corner is great, but I don't even know that he's the best corner on the roster right now with Jermaine Matthews and the way that he played
Yeah,
when Denzel Burke was out. I mean, they did lose some guys. There's no question they lost, Denzel Burke, starting corner. You're starting nickel and Jordan Hancock and Latham Ransom. Who I think is just. I was so happy that kid had a healthy year because he's always had the talent. It's just been a health issue with him, but because of that, a lot of guys have played and they do have a lot of talent behind, and it especially at the corner position. I think Aaron Scott has the makings of a future first round draft pick. and Devin Sanchez is coming in with as much hype as a prospect, as Jeremiah Smith did on the offensive side of the ball. Lorenzo Styles Jr. has gotten a decent amount of playing time. He's a veteran guy playing in the nickel, and I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce West, ends up getting some run there too. Who was another highly touted guy from Ohio in the last class, and then clearly they really like Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain at safety to fill in that gap. And then as you're showing, Nate, Fahim Delane and also Leroy Roker are some young guys that are also really talented. So this unit of almost of all the units besides the wide receiver position is the one I feel is best poised to have another just elite year. But it starts and ends for me with Caleb Downs.
Can I just follow up really quick on that? Obviously, it starts with Caleb Downs, and I am bringing up Davison not because he's better than Matthews, but because he's sort of the only question mark there. And even at that, it's still not a major question mark. So,
did you see, by the way, Matt? Did you see who was guarding Jeremiah Smith for a lot of the majority of the snaps in the scrimmage yesterday?
No.
Aaron Scott.
Nice.
And by all reports, he did a really good job. Like, you're never going to stop Jeremiah Smith. The guy's a freak of nature.
I mean, if we can get some starting play out of freshmen and sophomores that are just getting here, that's just going to be. I mean, the secondary and receivers, like, you just don't really worry about it. I guess. What are your thoughts on Jalen McClain though? I'm not really.
I love the kid. I think he's an absolute ball hawk. I think he got an interception in the spring game last year. Got some, if I'm not mistaken, got some special teams run. Got a little bit of backup snaps, but he's a real playmaker, and I think he's a little bit more in the traditional kind of center fielder role, kind of free safety. But the way they're going to play, it'll be really interesting to see how they play it. But I'm really happy that Matt Guerrieri and Tim Walton stayed on the staff, so there's continuity in the defense as well. So it's not like Matt Patricia's coming in here and it's going to be a completely different scheme. He's just going to augment what they were already doing. And so the back half of this defense should be absolutely nasty. And if it isn't McClain, Malik Hartford's been really good in spots. So I'm really, really excited about this secondary. But I remember last year when I took my son to the spring game, we were right in front of the DBs when they were working, and just watching the physical skill sets of the young guys, specifically Aaron Scott. Like, that dude, to me, and if Devin Sanchez is coming in as a higher ranked prospect than Aaron Scott, then look out, because this secondary is going to be loaded for a long time.
Hey, so real quick, I agree with you guys. Actually, I think even though you guys lost Denzel Burke, Lathan Ransom, and Jordan Hancock, this still looks like a really solid group. And then you've got depth too. I mean, with
the young guys,
and as far as Bryce West, you guys have a lot coming back, and just a lot of talent. I think Caleb Downs is obviously the superstar. I think the only thing you might have to worry about with him is the Will Johnson effect. Essentially, like, he's a junior. He's a top 10 draft pick, right? I mean, if he even gets a hangnail, he's probably going to be like, I think
Will Johnson was only sitting out because his team sucked. I don't expect Ohio State to be having 5 losses.
I'm not going to put that on Caleb Downs. I'm just saying that's what I would be concerned about as a Buckeye fan, because you've all seen that happen.
Nate, I think that's not a bad point. And I think I was concerned about, obviously when you lose that much upperclassmen leadership, as you saw last year, Michigan, when they won the national title, they were loaded with veteran guys, and the year after is very different. And one of the biggest things you have to be concerned about is the leadership, the leadership void. And what I've seen so far, I was really encouraged that Caleb Downs in particular was the one coming out and saying, man, we don't want the championship banners up. This team hasn't done anything. This team's trying to lay the foundation to do what last year's team did. But even Caleb Downs, that was his first year at Ohio State. He wasn't one of the vocal leaders of that defense. He was obviously probably the most talented player on the defense,
Mhm.
But now he gets to step into that leadership role the same way that they're going to be looking for JJ to do it on the offensive side. So it's
Yeah.
really cool to see him assume that mantle and take responsibility for that entire unit. Between he and Sonny Styles, those are the two guys I'm looking to lead the entire defense.
You know what? The Buckeyes actually have the best defensive player in the country and the best offensive player in the country, which
It's
is
wild.
hilarious. I
It's
mean,
wild.
that's really wild.
Yeah, I mean,
And Caleb
all
Downs,
the
you know what?
talent
He
we
might be
lost, but
slightly
yeah,
motivated. He's in
yeah,
rare air, Caleb Downs. He's lost to Michigan for 2 years in a row on two different teams. So
Yep.
he probably wants to go to Ann Arbor and get a win. I
More than
I
anybody.
Oh yeah, but
He and Ryan
in
Day.
his head though, if he gets a little injury, I think he's probably. I mean, he doesn't owe anything to Ohio State at this point. I mean, he came in, he's awesome. They won a national title. I think just beating Michigan is probably on his
Well,
probably pretty up high on his list. But and I don't want to wish that. I don't want to put that out there because I don't want the dude to get hurt. I want him to
no,
play
no,
the
I think it's
entire
fair.
year.
I think it's fair, and I think
But
Matt's point was correct too. That the a lot of those guys who make business decisions have to look at what
mm,
where the team is, and if the team doesn't really have a chance of winning, really competing for a national title, then if you're going to be a lockdown, guaranteed top 15 pick, then you have to make a business decision at that
yeah,
point. But
yeah,
the
you
team,
have to.
yeah.
the point last year was that Ohio State was still in that title race and Michigan wasn't. And I don't
Not at
blame
all.
anybody. And if Ohio State for some reason is not in the race this year, I
Then I
wouldn't
wouldn't
blame
even
them
care.
one bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Good
care at
point.
all. I
Good
I
point.
don't.
Michigan was not in the race, and Will Johnson really didn't owe Michigan
Yeah,
anything at that point either. And he was like, "Hey, I'm just going to stick it out." I don't blame him for a second. But
I mean, Will
Nope.
Johnson,
let's
he's
get to
one of the best
Michigan real
corners
quick.
I've seen in college. Like the guy's unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, why is he going to risk an injury when he's this good? One of the
Hmm.
best in the last 15 years, and why risk it on a team that's going to lose 5 times?
Yeah, I totally agree. And losing him is awful for this year. And hilariously, I forgot to actually mention Will Johnson and my key losses.
Key
Like
losses. Oops.
key losses, Will Johnson should probably be in there, but it's
Yeah.
strange because he didn't even play. I don't even know if he played half the season. Um, and so, I mean, if you're going down this list, okay, so we lost Makari Page, huge loss. Amir Hall was a transfer, but he's the guy that got the interception, the pick that almost went back for 6 against Will Howard. Amir
Mhm.
Hall got that. And then Quentin Johnson, he was just a solid safety overall. But we do get Rod Moore back, which was awesome because we lost him last year. But he's still not practicing. Hopefully, he's back to normal at some point during the fall. A little worried about that.
How bad was his injury that he's not even practicing still?
It obviously was pretty bad, and I think he
Yeah.
had some he had some irritations with that later
Is
on.
his
It got
injury
a little
like is he
worse.
even supposed to be like back to full speed this year from whatever his injury was?
Supposed to be, but he's played so much he doesn't necessarily need to play, but he needs to get out there though and get back into shape. It would
But
be awful if they didn't have him.
but Nate,
That's
both
for sure.
both starting corners are back. Is that correct?
Yeah, Jair Hill and Zeke Berry. Zeke, two guys who both got really manhandled in the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on. They lost all their coaching staff, new defensive coordinator, new DBs coach, new starters. Jair Hill and Zeke both got worked. They got cooked a lot at the beginning of the last
Well,
season,
and they
but
were
it
on the
was just the
field. That
last
that
three
whole
games.
defense, man, honestly I do
Mhm.
feel for that defense because they had a good defense. That offense was so bad, especially in the first 2/3 of the season, that they just left that defense on the field way too much, just
It's
way too
true.
much.
It's true.
But
Yeah,
they've got a bunch of
and
guys coming back that have a lot of starts under their belt. And that's always a big deal, when you get especially if you get in the second year of a coaching staff and get some continuity. Because I've always heard defensive coaches say that your front, your coverage has dictates the front. So everything that you're doing in the back half of your defense is really the most important part of your defense, because you can then marry up, you know, based on your scheme, then you marry up your run fits and especially your pass rush concepts have to match that. So you got to get guys that know the system and can play it. And at least they've got some guys coming back that have some experience.
Yeah, very true. Hill and Barry both ended the season really strong. Being able to hold up against Ohio State was huge. Being able to do what they did against Alabama, that was
Hmm.
huge. Jair Hill has the two best pass interference calls ever because I think both of them went on him against Jeremiah Smith. One of them kept Ohio State out of the end zone for just that very first field goal last year. But then I think the second one, I think Jeremiah Smith ended up scoring a touchdown right after that anyway.
Hmm.
But still, he was in position with Jeremiah Smith to actually hold him, which was a win
And
in itself.
then they played against Ryan Williams in the Alabama game. So you basically faced the two best receivers in college football last year back to back. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, they ended well. They ended well for sure. And it's interesting because this is the group that's going to get tested against Ohio State every year, like because Ohio State's receivers are so good. It's funny because Ohio State's secondary, I don't know what it's going to be like this year with a new quarterback for Michigan, but it seems like the secondary was almost like a like they just didn't have that much to do with the game against Michigan. It was just about Michigan's running game. Um, but yeah, I mean that's just wild. Other than Caleb Downs made all kinds of plays for Ohio State against Michigan. He, I think, stopped a couple big plays from happening, but he did that all
And
year.
it was crazy to watch what Ohio State did after the Oregon game where they were playing. They were they were there were times when it looked like Caleb Downs was basically playing like a deep middle linebacker,
He
and he was
was.
just erasing people in the run game. I mean, their run defense at the end of the year in the playoff run in particular was outrageous, but they were just shutting people down. And really, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why they lost the Michigan game, but that wasn't on the defense. That was 100% not on the defense. You know, that
Yeah.
defense post Oregon was just outstanding the entire year. But Caleb Downs is the X factor. I mean, he's the one that makes. Now, I do think the one thing that I do believe they potentially are missing is, especially if you watch the playoffs, Lathan Ransom was the physical presence in that secondary that would come down. I mean, he broke the quarterback from Tennessee's helmet in early in that
Yeah.
Tennessee game. He set the tone and knocked the Oregon running back out of the game. Like he
It's a
was
good
that
hit.
physical dude who would come down and hit you in the mouth. And not that Caleb Downs won't. I mean, he's a hitter as well, but they definitely need to have a physical presence in the run game. But I'm super excited to see what these guys can be because I do think that this may end up being the most athletic combination of safeties and linebackers in quite some time at Ohio State.
Yeah, you're right. We're going to talk about the linebackers next time, but yeah, that will be interesting. And like this is Ohio State's secondary is exactly what you want for defending the entire country, except for Michigan. I mean, the way the entire country plays offense, where you have
Yeah.
a lot of it's basically the passing game is emphasized. That's what you want. I think they get a little bit stuck in the mud when they play a team like Michigan because Michigan plays an offense that, quite frankly, they probably don't see more than maybe once, twice per year. It de-emphasizes the secondaries, I guess, athleticism and just overall impact on the game.
I think it's a fair point. I mean, and
Yeah,
the biggest reason is because you take the nickel off the field. So when you have a good nickel back like Jordan Hancock was, when you're using 12 and sometimes 13 personnel or 22, when you've basically got three quote unquote blocking guys between tight ends and fullbacks and H's and all the stuff that Michigan used. They have a lot of heavy sets. So you have to bring another linebacker on the field. And Ohio State
mhm.
probably played maybe one other team that had that heavy personnel on the regular, and Michigan's going to do it to you the whole game. So they're basically taking your some of that athleticism off the field for a bigger player.
Yeah,
And
except for
that's
Downs
part of the.
because Downs is everywhere.
Well, yeah,
That's
but
where
Downs
he's
doesn't come
huge.
off the
But the
field.
rest of
But
the rest of the secondary, you're right.
well, and they had you take Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom are still on the field. But the point was you
Mm,
take one of those guys like Hancock who could be playing head up on a slot or could shift and be the free safety in a different position. So you take some of the flexibility out of the back end of the defense when you substitute, and going in that you're basically going to be playing with extra tight ends and H backs. So
Mhm.
it dictates personnel. And you're right. That's why I applaud what Michigan has done over the last few years. When everybody else was going spread, Harbaugh doubled down, was like, no, we're going to grind. We're going to take the air out of the ball. We're going to dominate the line of scrimmage, and we are going to wear teams down with body blows with heavy personnel. And it's worked. And that worked in the Ohio State game because they didn't score enough. And at the end, they couldn't get the stops. And that's really what won them that game. But
It's
that's
bizarre
you're
to watch.
100% right, man. When you can take the nickel back, especially one of the more dynamic defenders off the field, just because of your your strategy and philosophy, hey, that's advantage to the offense.
Hey
Yeah,
guys,
there.
I gotta get out here in a minute. I just want to ask a real quick question before I leave. Do we think that there is a chance that someone like McLean or Lorenzo Styles gets bumped off for one of the younger freshmen or sophomores coming in this year? What do you think the chances of that?
I would say right now, from what I'm hearing, it's kind of a dead heat between Hartford and McLean for the Latham Ransom type role.
Hmm.
Um, and I expect all those guys to play because they're obviously going to be careful with Caleb Downs. So they're going to have a rotation of guys. I think if anybody, if you held a gun to my head and said, who do you think might play more? Um, it might be a guy like Bryce West playing in the nickel because he's got size. I like Lorenzo Styles, but he's played a lot of football and he's a good athlete, but he's still not played a lot of defensive back at the collegiate level.
Yeah,
And I think they're going to give him the opportunity, but these young guys are just too good not to play. And if it's, whether it's Devin Sanchez, Aaron Scott, or Bryce West, if one of those guys is just too good not to get on the field, it might be like Hancock, because I don't think Hancock was originally recruited as a slot guy. I think he was recruited as an outside corner and just showed that he could do it. And especially with the bodies those guys have, they may be big enough to hold up in some run support role too. So that I wouldn't be surprised. I think they're going to rotate a lot of guys, and unfortunately, they got to play Texas right out of the gate. So I don't know what we're going to find out necessarily in spring, but I do think that they're going to get a couple of those younger guys in there
I
more
guess
often
I
maybe
guess
than we're
my
expecting.
Brian, I guess my bigger question would have been like, do we think that any freshmen, whether it's a redshirt freshman like Aaron Scott um, or or Delane or Sanchez, or especially I was wondering if one of these young guys that's just too talented, are we going to possibly put them in there at a different position just because we have so many good corners? And
Yeah,
I
that's
feel
yeah.
like I feel like our corner depth is just way better than safety depth aside from Caleb Downs. That like, is McLean? I know you like McLean, but is McLean and Styles going to be staying there over these stud freshmen sophomores that we have at corner?
Well, I think the safety position's a little different because you have to be able to come up and tackle. But the nickel back,
Mhm.
the true nickel that they've run in the past has normally been a corner or a corner body. And
Okay.
so that's one I wouldn't be surprised at all if to see one of the young guys supplant Lorenzo Styles. But I still think he's going to play some, and I still think those other. To be honest, I don't even know that you lose a ton if IGB ends up going out, and you end up having to play Aaron Scott or you got to play Devin Sanchez. Like I
Yeah.
think the young guys are going to play a ton this year.
Yeah.
They really are. I think we
Especially
almost
that
have better
Sanchez kid.
depth now than we had last year, just
Hey,
for
Matt.
just in terms of
Yeah.
depth.
Matt, before you leave, though, I need to hear who you're predicting will end the season on top: the Ohio State secondary or the Michigan secondary. Like, who's best? Who's going to be better?
Well, I mean, I actually think that the Michigan secondary is going to be really good, especially if Rod Moore is back and healthy. Um, but I think this is still going to be one of the better secondaries that we've had. I mean, just top to bottom with all the depth, I think, especially by the end of the year. Um, I think the young guys, there's just so many talented young guys that are going to be playing that this is going to end up being, it's just, we're going to be going on a run in our secondary like Brian Hartline did with wide receiver, because the recruiting is just out of control in our secondary. So I just think that it's this DBU and wide receiver U, and if we can get some linemen this year, then I think we're going to be going back to back.
Buckeyes are always getting those outside positions.
Yes.
All the cotton candy and never the meat.
Yes.
Right.
But hey, though. But yeah, how about you, Brian? I actually agree. I think Caleb Downs is the X factor there. I think if Caleb Downs was not on
I'm heading out, but I'll be back for the next episode. Hopefully in the next couple of days.
Thanks, Go Matt. Bucks. See you, buddy.
See you, Matt. All right, Brian. Excuse me.
Yeah,
Brian, we'll close it out.
It's funny because Michigan always seems to have such solid secondary play. Even if they don't, obviously with a guy like Will Johnson, everybody knew that he had pedigree and was probably going to be a first round guy, but they don't always have like first round talent, but they just play solid, and it doesn't matter who the coordinators are. I think they're going to be good again, and you've got experience coming back, but I'm with you. I mean, I think when you have arguably the best defensive player in the country anchoring your defense that can do so many things, I thank my lucky stars all the time that Nick Saban retired and we were able to poach all the guys we were, but Caleb Downs is front and center. I mean, to have him and then to have just an embarrassment of riches when Denzel Burke goes out of a semifinal game and you bring in Jermaine Matthews and all he does is play at the same level or even better. You've got depth, and I feel the same way with these young guys they've got at these different positions. And even at the safety positions, there's some question marks. I think the hardest guy to replace, honestly, out of all those guys may end up being Jordan Hancock. But again, that position, the nickel position, really is a corner type body, and they've got tons of corners that can fill in. I think can learn that position and learn to play it. And worst case, you've got a guy in Lorenzo Styles who's played a bunch of football. So, I still think that they've got the better secondary of the two.
I agree.
Or will have.
I think Caleb Downs is definitely, if Caleb Downs wasn't on the team, I would say maybe this is really close to being a wash, at least for this year, based on what we know right now, right? I mean, we don't know how the season's going to end, but yeah, I mean, I think with Michigan's Jair Hill and Zeke Berry, Rod Moore, all those guys, they're not going to look like they did last year. They looked really good to end the year. One of the good things about Michigan not making the playoffs, not that I would choose that, but we actually got to see next year or this year's 2025 team play, a real team. So we got to actually see what we're getting. But still, I think Caleb Downs, having him on the team is just that X factor that's going to take Ohio State over the top. So, hey, Ohio State 1-0 right now. We went over the secondary, or 1-0.
We'll take it. We'll definitely take it.
Yeah, that's we honestly, got the linebackers coming up next, though.
Yeah, and we've talked in the past about this was a weird year where Ohio State, obviously lost the most important game of the season, but still had something to play for and went out and did what they had to do to win the national title. But it took an expanded playoff to do it. And, short of winning the national title, Ryan Day still has this issue with beating Michigan, and it's to me this is the most important game of the year, and they absolutely have to win this game in Ann Arbor this year. So
yeah, that's going to be tough. They got to go in with a new quarterback. Some huge losses.
Definitely,
go into Michigan and win. So we'll see.
And it's wild to me that you of anybody can appreciate that. You and the Michigan fan base can appreciate how hard that is to build something where you have, a very veteran team that decides to come back and take one last shot at it, wins the whole thing. And then not only are you, replacing positions, but you're replacing those personalities too. And that may be more important than anything for Ohio State, because the talent, I mean, when you recruit in the top 5 every year, you're going to have talent. and obviously they've gone in the portal and done some things too. But that's a huge, huge deal. How you replace that void, and much like Michigan last year, when you guys caught, a pretty darn good Texas team right away. When you're
Mhm.
trying to sort out all these changes, Ohio State has the same thing. I mean, there is no warm up game at all.
Yeah.
You get a very veteran Sarkeesian led Texas team coming to Columbus right out of the gate. So they're going to be tested right away by Arch Manning and those wide receivers. And
The
it's going to
receivers,
be,
yeah, Arch
yeah,
Manning. I mean, the run game, they're
huge
getting
test.
some guy named Baxter, right, for Texas, was hurt last year. Some superstar, 5-star running back. Um, he was hurt all last year. I think he's playing now. So yeah, the Buckeyes have a challenge on their hands for sure. That'll be real interesting.
Yeah, right out of the gate. Who does
Right
I
out the
haven't looked
gate.
at.
Not even a warm up game, right?
No, it's the first game of the season, and
Jeez.
I have not seen what's Michigan's schedule look like this year.
Oklahoma. They got to go to Oklahoma on the second
Okay,
second week. So that's like our hard game of the beginning of the season. So
right.
other than that, we've got
And then
a
who
cake schedule. I mean,
do you guys have Oregon this year?
don't have Oregon, don't have Illinois, don't have Penn
Wow.
State. We've got to go to USC. We've got to go to Nebraska kind of early. But if we got past Oklahoma, we got past USC, and we get past Nebraska, Michigan might be 11-0. Seriously,
That's incredible considering where they
it
were
is.
last
But
year.
that's a big if, though. Michigan can't really go out west. I mean, Michigan goes out west and they lose every time. So we'll see what happens.
Well,
And
and they've
we
got
don't
let's
know what we
see.
got either.
Well, I
New
don't think
quarterback.
Oklahoma knows either. I mean, Oklahoma was 6-6 last year, and they went out and got a new quarterback as well. So they got John Mateer.
Yeah, he's
Um,
good though. That
he's a
kind of
good
that
player, but
worries.
he's been all over as well. I mean, another one of those guys like Dylan Gabriel last year, a little bit. Been to a lot of different schools, but I don't know that Oklahoma necessarily knows who they are either. So that'll be a hell of a game early for
Heck
I think
yeah,
for both programs. It's kind of a yardstick game. So
yeah. Buckeyes definitely have it tougher with Texas though, because
yeah, and
Oklahoma's
I
not that.
just
I'm actually expecting to beat Oklahoma.
yeah, as
We can
I would
beat
too if I were in your position.
If we
I
can
would
beat
expect Michigan to
Alabama
win.
with Davis Warren and Alex Orji, I think we can probably go beat
And
Oklahoma.
Mother Nature.
That's right.
Mother Nature helped out a
Always
lot,
got Mother
but
Nature on our side. We just need
hey,
a
but you know what?
tornado to sweep through.
Hey, both teams had to play in it, so that's all you got to say, right?
Yeah,
Both teams had to play in
they're
that crap. Yeah,
awesome.
I genuinely will be surprised, even as talented as Ohio State is coming back. I will be surprised with all the changes and the fact that they get Texas right away if they win that game. And
Yeah,
that
it's going to be
kind of
tough.
sets you up. It's hard because you really at that point you're kind of behind the eight ball on the season because you could certainly get into the playoff with 2 losses, but I think you get to 3 losses and that's really hard.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
it's a huge ask right out of the gate, but it definitely helps to have a veteran and very talented secondary will help to lead the way for that defense for sure.
Especially against a team like Texas. Will
Yeah, and I
definitely
and,
help them.
and I really can't say enough that I think the scheme not changing, like not having a new defensive coordinator who's coming in to change everything, the fact that
Mhm.
Ryan Day was able to convince the safeties coach, the corners coach, and the linebackers coach and the D line coach to all stick around with
Yeah,
this new defensive coordinator is huge. And the defensive coordinator, by all accounts, has come in and really tried to get to know everybody, try to understand things, and figure out how he can help leverage the skills, not change everything. Because
yeah, true.
Patricia's coached. Obviously, everyone knows he's coached under Bill Belichick, and he had the really poor stint as a head coach at Detroit, but he is a football savant and he's got like Bill Belichick's passion for the history of the game and he knows every different scheme. They know all these things. They've coached all different ways. And so, that's going to be key to figuring out it is going to be a different team and I can't wait to look at previewing what they're doing and going to have to do up front because I think it will be a little different. But at least in the secondary, I think the secondary scheme that you saw at the end of last season will be much of what they're going to do this year. So I do expect it to be more zone coverage, more eyes playing a little bit further off with the eyes in the backfield, being able to see things, and you're going to have the free runners in the alleys coming up and run support, and you're going to have a team that is looking to turn the ball over. So
Oh,
it,
yeah.
it should be a lot of what you saw at the end of the year, which was, quite fun. Frankly, was I mean, that 2024 Ohio State defense was just disgusting. It was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it was. I think the only thing you got to think about now is what you were talking about. We'll get into this later on because we'll talk about we'll have a segment with the defensive line, but it's just them playing complementary defense. Is Ohio State
Yeah,
still going to be able to do that the way they did last year? And that's probably going to be a learning curve, which
no
you don't
doubt.
want to probably do when you go play Sarkeesian. And
Right out of the gate.
that's the problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, thanks a lot. This was awesome. We will talk about the linebackers in our next segment, and hope everyone does great. And please like and subscribe. Talk to y'all later. Oh, and go blue.
Oh, go Bucks.